Okay, so they've announced a new Pac-Man game based on the new TV show. It's going to be a 3D platformer on the home consoles and a 2D side-scroller on the 3DS with 3D graphics, of course. But I want to go into some of the history behind the Pac-Man games before going into this one, because I feel, especially regarding a certain sub-series, because it is important to this one. And then after that, I'm going to go into my thoughts on this game. What do I like? What am I more concerned about? And overall, what are my fears for the project in addition? And yes, it's going to be, that last one's going to be separated from the one preceding it. Of course, we have the maze games that everyone's familiar with, but in between that and the last of the retro maze games, Pac-Mania, there was Pac-Land, which was based on the TV show from the 80s. And essentially what it was the first real side-scrolling platformer. Yep, it came out before Super Mario Bros., and in fact, it was what inspired Shigeru Miyamoto to create Super Mario Bros. So that's pretty strong significance that's being ignored, but it kind of makes sense because that was in the middle of the video game crash. But disappointingly enough, after that, Pac-Man kind of hit this plateau of mediocrity until Pac-Man World came out for the PlayStation. This saved the Pac-Man series. What it did was it took the formula from Pac-Land and really expanded off of it. And not only that, it brought in elements from the maze games as well. And in addition, it brought in elements of its own. A lot of people talk about how much the Pac-Man World games were just rip-offs of Mario 64, but if you can't tell by my voice impersonating them, they're really not, and it really shows when you're looking at it on terms of gameplay mechanics and just overall the approaches taken with the level design. Now, with the original Pac-Man World, if I could compare it to anything, it'd be more so Crash Bandicoot, more so because you're interacting with 3D space, but you kind of have the feeling that you're moving in a two-dimensional way. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of a weird mix of 2D and 3D that's actually well executed in both examples provided. Though, of course, it's not in the same way, whereas in Crash Bandicoot, everything moved kind of vertically. Here, it's more so horizontally, kind of giving you the feeling that you're playing a side-scroller, but in reality, you're not. And again, for the most part, it was executed well. Then we have Pac-Man World 2, which was just complete 3D. Nothing even resembling 2D in that one. And at least in the standard gameplay, there were mazes, as you'd expect, that were on the side. If you collected a Galaxian, you'd be transported to a maze where the objective was very similar to those in the original maze games. Pac-Man World 2 is one of the best games I've ever played, period. Would I say it's on the same plane as Turrican 2 and the original Rogue Squadron? Not necessarily, but with all of the other games I've played over the years, it's definitely one of the better ones. It is, just looking at it, what it does on terms of game design, and just overall, it's an unbelievable game. And again, it really feels like it's kind of a mix between the old and the new. It feels like a Pac-Man game. It has a consistency with the maze games. In fact, you can play all of the maze games in the game as well. If you collect tokens, you can unlock more and more of the arcade games as well. But yeah, it had a consistency with the old games, but it was also its own thing. But then World 3 came out, which is where everything went downhill. It wasn't a platformer, it wasn't a maze game, it wasn't anything Pac-Man has been before, and it was something that Pac-Man never should have been. A beat-em-up. It was very repetitious. The environments were really unpleasant and bland. Pac-Man could not only talk, but he also made sex jokes, really bad ones too.
Uh-oh. I'm detecting a rise in energy in your sector, Pac-Man.
Details of my sector's energy should be between me and Miss Pac. Thank you very much.
Did Pac-Man just make a sex joke?
Hey, Miss Pac-Man likes me cuddly, okay?
And overall, it was where Pac-Man started repeating what happened in the 90s, where he hit that plateau of mediocrity. And for a long time now, this has been the closest thing we've gotten since Pac-Man World 2 and the original Pac-Man World, which is why I am so hyped for this new one. Because Pac-Man hasn't been a platformer for over a decade now. And I thought I was never going to see this again. I thought after World 3, I thought they just gave up. In fact, I think they gave up on World 3, though that was made by Blitz Games and not Namco, so I guess that makes sense. Something went wrong with that one, but it's not a bad game, it's just a bad sequel. But nonetheless, with this new one, so what do I like? I like that the environments that you're in look relatively wide open. With a lot of 3D platformers in these years, we've seen a lot of 2D sections, which I hate. Don't get me wrong, I have nothing against 2D games. But if I want to play a 3D platformer, I want to play a 3D platformer. Don't give me more limitations, because that's what it feels like. Instead of giving us 3D space and taking advantage of it, it's so obnoxious when everything's just so limited, and it doesn't look like this game's going to do that. I really hope it doesn't. But nonetheless, again, I'm really excited about the platforming element, because the platforming in there, what they showed, did look like the kind of platforming you saw in the past. But still kind of gave new spins to it, too. Which, again, I'm all for. And I don't think it's going to be a direct successor to the Pac-Man World games, but more so the kind of successor like Pac-Man World was to Pac-Land. That's what it looks like to me. And the more and more I see that trailer, at first my initial response was kind of mixed, but the more I watch the trailer, the more positive my reaction becomes, and I'm actually really looking forward to this. So what are my concerns? Well, a lot of footage in the trailer is devoted to the ghost encounter sections. And it shows a lot of Pac-Man chomping at the ghost. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Pac-Man eating ghosts. That's what he does. But I just don't want that to be the only thing. I don't want this to become like Pac-Man World 3. I don't want this to become the equivalent of, oh, here's an enemy, just beat the crap out of him slowly. Oh, he goes down, beat the crap out of the next enemy slowly. Oh, that one falls down too, next enemy. Oh, I don't want it to become that repetitive. But looking at all of the other segments, what little they showed in the trailer, it did give me the impression that it is going to be paced out better. I think it does look like that isn't the only dimension to it. The more I observe everything carefully, the more I look in the background, I look at the environments, I look at how the levels are set up. And then I've seen more, I shouldn't say footage, but I've seen more screenshots of the 3DS version, though. And I like the direction they're taking with it. And again, it sounds like that they're going to do the same thing with the 3DS version that they're doing with the console version. the trailer for the console version only showed one environment, the city, but the 3DS version, the screenshots shown, you got an ice world and a lava world, and Pac-Man not only had the chameleon suit that was shown in the trailer, but also like a fire suit, and other things like that. And overall, I like what I see. I also kind of like the tube system that they kind of have. It kind of reminds me of something from a Sonic game or something. But it also kind of reminds me of the Pac-Dot chains from, well, especially Pac-Man World 2, where you get all these crazy paths and crazy angles, and I'd like to see them do that, and it looks like they are, and I kind of like how in the trailer, it doesn't go how he expects. I like how he's flying through it all confident, and then he sees the ground, he realizes, oh crud, I screwed up, and then he just slams it down on the ground. I actually really like that. It'd be fun to see what kind of twist they could add to that. So yeah, what are my fears? What am I afraid about? Well, while the Pac-Man World games, at least 1 and 2, deservedly, got a lot of sales and essentially, and got pretty good scores too. Upon retrospect, a lot of people are just going on the, they're a ripoff of Mario 64 bandwagon, because it seems like more and more and more the gaming community is becoming more Nintendo-centric instead of being open to trying new things, and it becomes apparent that we're encouraging people to just throw labels and dismiss everything that doesn't fall into our comfort zone. So I think that's probably what's going to happen with this. I'm afraid that it's just going to be dismissed as just Mario again, and not really evaluated carefully. People aren't going to pay attention to the differences, and and looking at the comment sections, it's apparent that people are already doing this. And I was actually going through some of the comments with one of my friends, and he's more of a Mario fan than I am. This was after we both saw the trailer, and he was just sitting there like, oh my god, you can't be this stupid. This looks nothing like Mario! I mean, yeah, the chameleon suit kind of functions like Yoshi, but that's about it. The platforming and level design look totally different. Overall, I'm really looking forward to this one. I don't think it'll be as good as World 2, but I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm not going to go into the game with that mentality. I'm going to give it the chance. I'm going to go into it like I did with Lair, where I'm going to give it the opportunity to be really anything. It could be good, it could be bad, it could be somewhere in between, it could be really good, it could be really bad, it could just be anything. And I think and just evaluate everything openly and see where it all ends up. But overall, with what I'm seeing at this point, I am generally really pleased. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll see you later.